Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Hello, all you sultry Sith and sassy Padawans. This is Jedi Master John Mills coming to you with a special episode of Aggressive Negotiations. This week, we're going to be getting into some saucy territory here in the galaxy far, far away. So joining me, as I would require on a special mission such as this, is Jedi Master of Love, Matthew Rushing. Matt, any special warnings you want to give to all the ladies and gentlemen out there in the audience?
Well, I think everybody, this is just pretty much the episode that everybody has been waiting for. And so I'm super excited to be able to be here and really just to be able to talk about something that, I think it's just going to be a lot of fun.
Well, as we like to say here when they talk about the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, he possessed the secret of how to create life, which I say is just a six-pack of Schlitz in the right mixtape. But we come at this episode of Aggressive Negotiations grateful for everybody that's already dropped a review or rating for us over at Affable Podcasts. If you haven't already, please go on and do that. But Matt, the topic for this week is something that just sort of flits across the mind from time to time, that we all know the Jedi were all but extinct at the end of Order 66. And we know that there were some Jedi that took it the right way, some Jedi that took it the wrong way, and some Jedi that just took it the hard way, like Baylan Skoll. So we come to this, and it's sort of a fleeting thought, and I'll just throw it right out there on the floor for you. If the Jedi feel that the light is being extinguished and that their way is the light, wouldn't it follow that in this time of great distress, possibly one of the orders or mandates, if you will, of the Jedi when they went back out into the galaxy would have been to forego their prohibition against mating and procreating, and instead considered it their duty to have as many kids as possible to try to repopulate the Jedi by that means? Isn't it inevitable that somebody out there would have had that thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the question in that for me, I think really became, when you kind of brought it up and I was thinking about it, it doesn't seem like you have to be, a Jedi to have somebody have force ability. Like that It doesn't necessarily mean that, you've got two Jedi parents, they're going to give birth to, somebody who's strong in the force. And I do think that that's an interesting thing. Do we know specifically that just because, two people who have high midichlorian counts that were Jedi actually leads to, if they have a child, that child being strong in the Force? Now, I think that as we look at Star Wars as we have seen it, and the only place really where this question I think became a real issue, where we actually saw this be the case, where somebody had a child. Honestly, that it was Hera and Kanan, right? They have Jason, and we get the thought that that he's possibly force sensitive, right? And so in fact, we have that from the Ahsoka series, right? That he is force sensitive. Which I do think is incredibly interesting. This idea that's the case, and so I don't know. What do you think about this? Did that come to mind? The idea that this is like in some ways like a Harry Potter situation, where, we didn't specifically, have a child, just because a child was born of two wizards, that meant they were going to be, another wizard, specifically, or could they have a Muggle child? That's the kind of question that I came across in this. And so, where did you kind of land with it?
You're coming at it from the way that a proper, reasonable Jedi should have come to it, which is, I agree with you. The Force has a will that it exerts, and just because you are the offspring of a Force-sensitive person does not mean that you yourself will be Force-sensitive. In fact, even though it will make some ears curdle out there, we find that with Palpatine and his clones, that it is possible to have that sense of offspring with somebody who isn't particularly gifted. But then the next generation is gifted. So the Force sort of chooses who it wants its avatars to be, who it wants to gift greater power to, as it were. But I think that there would inevitably, I really think there would inevitably be Jedi out there whose inner compass would be broken, in a sense, and they'd be looking for what's the right direction. Obviously, Kanan and a lot of Jedi like him chose to run out and go into hiding and try to keep it on the down low and those sorts of things. Balin went out and he got his own apprentice and said, I'm going to remake the Jedi, but in the image that they should have been, which is where I know how they went wrong, and I'm going to fix it, and we're going to fix it my way. And then you have, of course, all of the different variations in between. But I think that there would be a tremendous storytelling opportunity for somebody to come in and examine the idea of a Jedi who, whoever it was as a Jedi, there would inevitably be somebody out there who would consider it a mandate of the Jedi to go out there and have kids, and at least increase the odds of Force-sensitive children. And then if there were Force-sensitive children, raising them as their own, sort of like making it a family thing. And say, your father was a Jedi, you're a Jedi, we're all going to be Jedi from here on out, and we'll rebuild the order this way. But then you also get into the troubling territory of a Jedi who thinks of this mandate and then goes out and basically just irresponsibly starts having children with as many people as possible and doesn't stick around for it, which you could argue creates a whole host of other problems by just creating a bunch of Force-sensitive kids that the Sith can then come along and corrupt at their whim.
Yeah, I mean, see, I do wonder too. This is a question too. Like, how many Jedi are left? We don't really know, but it seems like there's a decent amount, maybe
less than 100, but more than 2.
Yeah. And so that's a good question, I think, is like how many Jedi are actually left. And what I feel like see in the series that have come is that so many of them really struggle even to stay alive. Like, I think of even like the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, right, where that Jedi comes to meet him in the desert, right, and he's just been on the run, and it's just been so terrible for him. And trying to stay alive has been hell for a couple of years. We know by that point, what Luke is 7 or 8 in that series. I think he's 8 because Leia is supposed to be 8 too. So yeah, it's been like 8 years he's been on the run, and his life is just awful. And so, point. I think we get to see a lot of these Jedi, and it's been really rough for them. And they've struggled mightily with, trying to find a life at all. And so I wonder if any of them, really even had time to think about this, and I think that's a question that I really come up with in this, is just how difficult it would be for them to even have these thoughts. Like, I'm just trying to stay alive, right. And I don't know if if I will even be alive. And so to think about, like, should I start to have kids and will that be a possibility, is, I think a really hard thing for them to think about.
That's a fair point. That's a really fair point. When you're on the run, your priorities are different. So even if you were to come to the conclusion that it would be your duty to repopulate the galaxy with Force-sensitive beings, you wouldn't want to slow down enough for it to happen. But I mean, that even opens up a whole other question for me, because the one thing I'm sort of unclear on is the Jedi have to be setting off a beacon in the Force, basically. So like when the Sith are quiet and thinking and meditating and reaching out, they can sort of feel their presence out there. But if that's the case in and of itself, why wouldn't they push into the unknown regions? I mean, Obi-Wan stays where he is on purpose because he has a reason for being where he is. Yoda's off in hiding somewhere. We know where Kanan is, and Kanan's kept a really low profile up until, 5 years before A New Hope. But Jedi who pushed out into the unknown regions would have been able to do the same. So wouldn't it have been something that made sense for them to go to the unknown regions just in the first place? Like, it's one of those things where it's like, I think that any Jedi on the run who were thinking clearly would have gone to, they wouldn't even have stopped at the Outer Rim. They'd have found a way to go even beyond that. Because, to borrow from the Grand Inquisitor, a Jedi can't help but help others. So you'd want to get as far away from others that you had to help.
Yeah.
That would be in the way of the Empire, as it were.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that is the thing that undercuts it. I mean, the thing is, I come in with the question, and it's like, honestly, I guess it doesn't hold water. Even though in my heart, I think there's got to be at least one Jedi that tries this out there. One Jedi that completely misinterprets their mandate and how they're going to go about it. But no, I'm willing to accept your argument that just being on the run would have precluded anything like this from being anybody's sole focus in any way. So let me flip it on its head just to take it in another direction before we close it out. But with Jedi who, let's say they inadvertently have children, would that Jedi stick around, or would that Jedi flee, knowing that if their child was Force sensitive, they'd be giving off more of a beacon for the Sith to find? Would the presence of a child actually drive a Jedi away from where they had fallen into hiding because they knew that it made them more likely to be found? And maybe the kid would be better off if that Jedi wasn't there, potentially magnifying their presence in the Force.
I think that's something that when you think about the idea of like a Jedi settling down, having kids, creating somebody who is possibly Force sensitive and a child, how are you going to protect that child, especially when sadly you can't even protect yourself? Or you think you can't protect yourself? I think that's a great question, and one that's would be incredibly scary for any Jedi to be facing. And so I love that idea of how difficult that would be in this process. And so I keep coming back to the idea of seeing Hera and Kanan and that when they get together, right? I think the beauty of that, and maybe this is the thing, is them choosing to be in a relationship together by the end. One of the things that it does is that it shows that they're willing to live life. they're not going to stop living life because of what's happened in the galaxy. In fact, by choosing to create life in this, and to think about having a life together, it shows that they're willing to say, hey, we're going to celebrate why we're fighting for our lives, what we're fighting for. And I think that's actually pretty cool. I think that actually shows maybe one of the reasons why if a Jedi could find a place where they could find a person, that they wanted to be with, they could find some sort of stability in that, that the question really wasn't about, whether or not this is wise. It's really about, this is a celebration. This is a celebration of all that we believe in, all that is special, all that makes life worth living at this point. And I think even the question of whether or not you choose to do that is, if you have the opportunity, do it, And so whether or not, Jedi would necessarily be encouraged to do that, I think it's not necessarily an encouragement, but in some ways too, their life was like, go find, if you're still alive, go into hiding, find a way to survive, and live life, man. And if that means that, you find a person that you love and it enables you to be able to have some semblance of happiness and joy, do it. So
you know what? I like the way you put that, because when you think about it, then a Jedi not being a Jedi, but going out and establishing a normal life would be the ultimate act of rebellion, because it would guarantee the Jedi would continue, because it's inevitable that somewhere along the way, the Force would run strong in somebody's family, as it did the Skywalker family. And so simply settling down, and it's not even necessarily saying having kids. Like, let's turn it away from that and be like, okay, let's accept the Jedi. There wouldn't be there might be one Jedi that's like, oh, I got to go out and have as many kids as possible. But on the whole, I accept what you're saying, where it's like, they got to go into hiding. They're on the run constantly. Maybe the best they can do is just go out and just find a simple trade. If they find a family, if they find an opportunity to have a family, great. But if not, it's fine. Just going out and being a fruit vendor somewhere is completely a feasible way to rebel, and at least make sure that the spark doesn't go out. And then if you truly believe in the will of the Force, wherever you end up is going to be where the Force says you should be. So maybe that's the whole problem with thinking there as well, is any Jedi taking the action of forcing a situation by choosing to do what Baylan Skoll does, or this theoretical Jedi who's going out and trying to have as many kids as possible. That's actually a way of the dark side, because you're exerting your will. You're not trusting in the will of the Force. Even Obi-Wan and Yoda, they do not take action until the Force gives them the signal that, yep, you got to come out of retirement now. Yeah. Kanan's the same way. Kanan's completely in retirement, and then suddenly this kid pops into his life, and it's like, oh, well, maybe I am meant to do this. Huh, okay then. Right? Yep. So it's like, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the whole problem with the thesis, is any Jedi going out there and trying to force the solution or the opposite effect of the Sith or something like that is falling into the exact trap. They're trying to control the way the galaxy goes, and the only way that you're going to win is to let go and let the Force put you where you need to be when you need to be there. So even the Jedi going and seeking out Obi-Wan, that's a mistake. Did the Force tell you to go out and seek Obi-Wan, or did you act out of fears of the dark side? So, maybe that in and of itself, any idea like this is a bad idea, because you're trying to exert your own will on the Force.
Yeah. I think I absolutely love that. I think that I think one of the beauties of this question is that we only see and we only get one character that does this, and that character that we see is Kanan. And I think the beauty of that is that Kanan is unique in the sense that, you know, he is somebody who was a Padawan who survived.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not raised fully in the Jedi Order. And so him then choosing this course of action of deciding to have a child, and even just to have a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is what allows him. I think that really comes down to the fact, hey, he knows the Jedi Code. He's raised with the Jedi Code. He's raised by the Jedi. But, you know, he's what, 12 by the time, or 13 or something like that, by the time that the Jedi Order becomes extinct.
And by the time that he meets 4 of the greatest clones ever created.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that makes this just really interesting. And one of the reasons it makes it interesting is because, he chooses to have this life, and it's a really different thing than most of the other Jedi. And I think it creates a really interesting opportunity. And I kind of wish, I think one of the things that I do wish we got to see is just see more of this, that we had gotten to see more of the opportunity for, you know, Kanan to have kids, and more Jedi to have kids. I just think it would have been really interesting. So, but we don't get that, unfortunately, and so, you know, it's sad that that's the case. But you know, I love it. You know, I just kind of love that we get this one little snippet of this happening. And it does make me wonder, you know, are there other stories to tell like this?
Well, I definitely think there are. I mean, I will remain convinced, even though I accept your arguments, that there was at least one Jedi who went the way of trying to be a Force Lothario and create as many progeny as possible in order to compensate for the end of the Jedi. It just, for some reason, it makes sense to me, because I think that Order 66, the opportunity is, if they continue to tell stories of Jedi impacted by Order 66, there are a lot of opportunities, because of the fact that a giant traumatic event like that, there are so many different possible emotional reactions to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it might even be really interesting to see the story of somebody who doesn't align with the Sith or the Jedi, but goes completely, like Ahsoka winds up walking the true path. What if there's an opposite end of that true path, and just being that counterbalancing force to Ahsoka out there? Because they took Maul away from us, so Ahsoka is on the one end of the spectrum. I think it'd be really interesting to see somebody on the flip side of that coin, who is neither Sith nor Jedi, and walks the way that the dark side tells him to go, the true way of the dark side. And we therefore find out the shortcomings, like we talked about in the Sith episode. We find out the shortcomings of Palpatine and Vader, and how even they weren't really following the true path of the dark side, because they were exerting their own will, you know, because we know about the world between worlds. We know that there is a completely different plane of existence, and finding the true path for either side involves all of this stuff. So I don't know. Maybe that Lothario Jedi survivor is the one who's the flip side of the Ahsoka coin, who decides to try to tip the balance that way or something. I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah, it is. I think it just was really interesting. The question, and it makes me wonder too. Like, was this one of those things where too many Jedi? It's not just that. So, you know, them trying to save themselves is a big part of this. but that they are maybe they were too entrenched in Jedi dogma to try to do this, and so I think that's a question as well. So I don't know. This is a fun question though, and I'm absolutely wondering what the listeners think, John, of whether or not they think that Jedi should have tried to have more children. And so please write in, let us know what you think, and hit us up all over social media. We're on Twitter or X Twitter at the Jedi Masters, Terra Network at Join Nerd Party, on Facebook, facebook.com/Nerd Party, all the places. But John, if people wanted to catch up with you and let you know what they think about this, where would they find you?
Well, gosh, you can find me as Kessel Junkie out there, or you can find me right here on the network on a show called House Lights with Darren Moser and Tristan Riddell, where we talk about the works of directors and different combinations with lots of wacky results to our conversations. It's a lot of fun. And you can also find me, actually, Matt, let's talk about where they can find you, because I make guest appearances over on one of your shows over on TFM, the 602 Club, but where else can people find you out there?
Yeah, you can find me all over the place under the name Matt Rushing02. You can also find me here on this network doing Owl Post, talking about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series over on the TFM network. You've got the 602 Club, as well as a lot of shows about Star Trek, and so I hope you'll check all of those out. But John, I think they're having speed dating over there at the Jedi Temple, so maybe it's time we close these negotiations.
Let me get my tin of Altoids and some nice cologne with midichlorians in it, and negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.